I feel like I should title this video, "This book might be dangerous to your faith," or "If your faith is weak, you might want to skip this book." Okay, but if you're still there after that particular, what would you call it, caveat, yeah, I got a really good book for you. I mean, aren't you tired of having someone else interpret Jesus for you? Someone else interpret all the saints in the Bible for you. Aren't you like tired of people telling you in every denomination, every side of religion saying, well, this is the real Jesus, that's the real Jesus, this is the real Jesus, right? Well, I get tired of that, okay? Because the Catholic Jesus is very different than the Protestant Jesus, and the Jesus of the Baptist is different than the Methodist Jesus, and the Episcopalians, and all this other stuff. And then if you start walking back, you have, oh, I don't know, the Reformers, Martin Luther, they put Jesus somewhat differently than, it's a little different than Calvin Jesus or Calvin's God. And somewhere in the 300s, someone decided that Jesus was God, even though he explicitly says, over and over in the Bible that he is the Son of God. And he, he would, I mean, far from me to say what Jesus is thinking, but I am saying that if, uh, I keep telling you, I am, the son of my father's the greatest, my father's the coolest, my father's the awesomest, and somehow you ended up worshiping me instead of my father, I'd be very angry about that. That's just my thought. Anyways, I get tired of looking into that, just listening to all that, reading my Bible and thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. Okay. I work in accounting. Okay. And the things in one of the things that you do in accounting, things balance. Okay. At the end of the day, when you did all your numbers, calculate everything adds up, balances. One column will balance the other one. Okay. So the mind I have says that it doesn't balance. It's not making any sense. Now, you'll tell me, well, this is divine stuff, it's God, and you're never gonna understand it and all that. And I reject that right out of hand. I'm gonna tell you why. Because God put his word and his message in one of the most obvious, most simple things in the world.
In a book.
In a book. And in order for you to not get lost in some weird interpretation, right? He put it in historical context. So that when you look at a passage of the Bible, right? Whatever passage of the Bible, you will see the historical context and then thousands of years later, you still will be able to make sense of what he was saying or the message that he wanted to communicate. There is a there's a very important context inside of the Bible. Okay, there's a context, and you can really get a lot of it. But you have to be able to read thoroughly, slowly, with a critical mind, and not spend 5 minutes every morning in your devotionals and think that this is going to bring you closer to God and Jesus. I have to say, you're not getting all the things that the Bible can offer. So, the book that I want to warn, but really, I want you to read it, okay? So, let me give you a premise. The good Lord Jesus Christ was a Jewish man in a Jewish context, okay? He was he lived in the first century, year 1 to year 30, 33, depending on who you're talking to and what the calendar they're looking at and all of that. But the 30-year gap, time space, okay? He was born in Galilee or Nazareth, or if I don't remember quite the town correctly right now. And so he was born and he lived as a human on this earth for 30 years. When we say that he is God, we automatically remove his humanity, which was actually very, very crucial to who he was and who he is now. Okay? So remember what I just said about God writing a book? He put it in words. Okay, so we have that. And then he put it in a historical context. So Jesus came in a time in history of great advancement, of great cultural change, and all these things, right? So one of the things that we miss out is when we look at Jesus as a Christian, is the fact that he was not a Christian. Okay, Jesus was a Jew, firmly under the law. Okay, he and now there is a lot of scholarship out there, your typical evangelical, anti-rights kind of dudes that say that Jesus came to break the law and free us from the law. And that is what Paul says also, and all of that. Now, the problem is with a lot of these friends that we have, a lot of our very well-meaning, well-read, evangelical scholars, Christian scholars, is that they read other evangelical Christian scholars. They read the Bible, obviously, they're well versed in that. They read all the things that are part of that world, but they don't go to the source. Okay? They don't go to the source. They keep reimagining and remanufacturing and regurgitating certain words and certain teachings that someone passed down from someone passed down, or that they call the early church fathers and stuff like that. And all of that, while it's important and it has been able to further the name of Jesus Christ and the name of God in the world, is missing a very important foundation, and that is the Jewish context of Jesus. Now, Jesus, obviously, he read the Bible, well, the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, however you want to call it. Okay. And one of the big things that he would have been is a very observant of the Torah or the Book of Moses or the law or the teachings of God, however you want to call them. Okay, he would have been that. And if you're really familiar with that, when Jesus is doing the things that he's doing in the Gospels, where the Pharisees accuse him of breaking the law and stuff like that, he turns it upside down and says, no, you don't understand the law. Now, a lot of this stuff, because we don't know the context, sounds really radical and new and all of that. And yes, this is where it might rattle your fate a little bit, but I want you to listen because it's important if you're made it this far, okay? A lot of the things that Jesus said have been said before by Jewish sages of of hundreds of years, at least 100 years before Jesus lived. You have all these things. The one thing that you have is called the Mishnah. Now, Jewish tradition says that when Moses came down from the mountain, he brought the written Torah, the five book of Moses, and then he brought the oral tradition, right? If you ever read with any care the things that are in the Torah, it's not really a law code. What it is, Torah means teachings, so it's not like it's not like it's an actual low code. It is more teachings and all this other stuff. So thousands of years of tradition have been passed down orally from generation to generation on how to interpret these things. Jesus would have lived with that. He probably one of the things that we missed is he was not there's a lot of contextual things about his life that we don't understand and that we don't know because we don't study those things. Now, that's what this book is all about. Okay. Let me share the screen. Okay. The book is New Light on the Difficult Words of Jesus, Insights from His Jewish Context by David Vivid. Now, this one is edited by Louis de Verberg and Bruce Okema. Now, Louis de Verberg has some fantastic books regarding the Jewish context of Jesus. Now, this one was very interesting, eye-opening. See, I was reading it on my tablet, so let's just open it here. So there's a lot of things in the New Testament that Jesus says that are really hard to understand, right? They're sayings that we don't get it. There's no context. We don't understand and all that. So what this particular book goes through is talking about what exactly was Jesus talking about. And I know what I just said that, are you tired of having someone interpret Jesus for you? And so you say maybe this is also Jesus being interpreted for you. But what is actually happening is we're taking a couple of things that are supposed to happen in biblical studies. You're supposed to take the historical context, you're supposed to take the actual biblical context, and then get insight onto some of those things that Jesus says seem very difficult to understand. So it's a great book. It's not that long. It's about less than 200 pages, I believe. And it's got articles, and obviously, like every good book, has a bibliography. It tells you things you could read after that, where the sources came, all of that. But it is really interesting. One insight that I gained from this particular book is we believe one of the things that we believe is that Jesus was very poor. Okay, that he was financially destitute from the very beginning. Different. And things couldn't be any further from the truth. Okay. If you read your gospels, he got gold and myrrh and frankincense, but even before that, the Mary and Joseph were probably not poor to begin with. Okay. Now, the misunderstanding comes when one of the things about being a rabbi or a itinerary sage, which is what Jesus was, is that when they started their ministry, they left everything behind. Now, they didn't sell everything, they didn't give away everything, they didn't, all these things. What they did was stepped away from their day-to-day life, their business and stuff like that. And they went about teaching and preaching and sharing the Torah, both the written Torah and the oral Torah, to to the entire community. Okay. And they depended on the generosity of the people in whose house they stayed in order to eat and do all and have a place to sleep, etc. Now, he didn't start poor. Most sages didn't start poor. Okay. They left their possessions, and at some point after their ministry was over, they go back to their house, their tools, their trade, whatever it is that they did before. Jesus didn't do that because he died on the cross. Okay? So that is one of those little details among hundreds and hundreds of details that are in this book about the ministry of Jesus. Now, you will hear now that, so for instance, the oral tradition was called the Mishnah, and it was put together in the 200s. Okay. Now, it was when it was written, but this oral tradition had been passed down probably from the time of Moses, maybe more. Okay. It's been passed down from one to the other to the other. Now, we are living a world full of aids for our memory and things like that, and we watch TV and we read things and we don't have to remember things and stuff. But if you're about my age or my husband's age, you'll remember back in the day, you knew your bank account, you knew a bunch of phone numbers, you knew bus stop routes, you knew all this data that you had in your brain that you could recall at an instant. We don't do that anymore because it's unnecessary. Most of us have a cell phone and all our contacts are recorded there. Now think about a generation 2000 years ago, okay? Had none of that. Their entire life is dedicated to working, trying to figure out how to feed themselves. And in the meantime, that the whole time is dedicated to learning the oral traditions, okay? And they're passed down from one to the other, and from one generation to the other generation to the other generation. So you can say, well, I don't need that. This is all I need is my Bible and all that. And how can one argue with that? But don't you want to know who truly Jesus is? Okay. Now, that is one of the really good books that I just read. It's pretty straightforward. It gets a little bit into the language and stuff like that, scholarly and all that, but it is very, very approachable. But if you want to do what is it? Up your game. The other book that I want to recommend to you is this guy. Let me share. This is also called Jesus and the Law of Moses. It's a little more scholarly and it's a little more dense, but this is from a Christian perspective. And what he gives you in this book is a really good idea and a really good example back and forth all the time about how Jesus doesn't really break the law during his ministry. Okay, we have this impression that he came to do away with the law and all of that, except that Jesus literally says the law will not pass away until everything is accomplished. So you have to reconcile those two things. Either he did break the law and he came to do away with the law, or we're misunderstanding what he's saying. But then, if you take a moment to really look at what Jesus is doing, understand what the Old Testament says, the law in the Old Testament, you can see how he wasn't really doing away with the law, the Torah, which is really kind of radical thinking for us, because then as Christians, you're like, well, what do I do? And we are branches grafted in to the olive tree. That means that the olive tree being Israel, the ancient Israel. So is the Torah not for us? Or is it for us? These two books will help you decipher that. They will help you think clearly about those things. Uh, the one about the new light on the difficult words of Jesus is pretty straightforward. You'll probably fly right through it. The other one is a little slower. It took me a little longer to kind of, because when the books are a little scholarly, I have to really, really slow down to make sure I understand the concept. So here's the thing. There you will say, well, no, we're not supposed to, slaughter animals and things like that, which it wouldn't apply to us anyways. We are not we don't have, there's no temple anymore. the temple has been gone. So anything related, sacrificial, things like that to that temple, they're gone. That's over. So when you take off all the sacrificial stuff, all the temple related purity laws and things like that, when you take that out of the way, then you're left with the law of Moses, the Torah, the things that God wants you to do. And like it's shown over and over in the Bible, you have to reinterpret it for your own context. But all of that, you can read these two books, get a really good idea. But like I said, if you are one of those people that say, I need my Bible and nothing else, or me and the KJV till the end of time, I got nothing for you, buddy. And you know what? The basic of the Bible is real simple. Personal responsibility, take care of the poor, don't be a what, okay? Simply like that. Love each other, love your neighbor like you love yourself, love God, and you're good to go. And if you got it perfectly, then you got nothing to worry about. But none of us got it perfectly. And so we need a little help understanding certain things. I'm telling you, 15 minutes with a devotional in the morning, how is that supposed to get you close to God? I doubt it. Anyways, enjoy your day. I hope you pick up these two books. They're worth every penny. All right. God bless.